It's about to go down with Marc and Cathey, a live coaching show about dropping ideas. Marc and Cathey coach and have conversations with brilliant idea creators who are reimagining the world through the expression of their words, thoughts, and action.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to It's About to Go Down. I am Marc Williams.
And I'm Cathey Armillas. I'm really excited today because we have my friend, Dr. Omékongo Dibinga on. If you don't know him already, oh my God, not only are you gonna know him during this episode, but look him up. Like, he's a superstar in so many ways, and we'll talk about it in the episode. But Omékongo has a very important topic that we're gonna cover today, and his idea is it's gonna be around, like, how do we break down stereotypes? Like, how do we break it down? And so I'm really excited to talk about that. And Omékongo, thanks for being on today.
No, thanks for having me. Do you mind if I do a little something by way of introduction, if that's okay?
Oh, please. The floor is yours.
Awesome. So check it. When I was young, they used to call me a monster, African, bushman, monkey. I was bothered. Used to pick on my clothes. I didn't have Nikes. I didn't have nice bikes, other fancy things. I didn't have much loot, no savings, no trust fund. So walking out my house every day was not fun. Had no heat in the winter, no AC in the hot sun. Next to my bed was rats. Leftovers, they got some. Used to wonder why me, while seeing on TV, dudes with Beamers, Jaguars, of course Mercedes. Being broke as a kid used to drive me crazy. Hearing the guns at night, I couldn't sleep like a baby. But now I'll make it plain. I'm writing this on a plane on my way to California for a show. What changed? Well, I stopped making excuses for myself, took blame. You take control of your life and you can do the same. Don't matter, you've been abused, grew up with no parents. You dealt with booze, dealt with drugs, wheelchair rampant. Maybe you grew up poor in a house, not a home. Maybe mom was an addict, papa rolling stone. What you gotta see is life is just testing you out to see if you'll hurt yourself, take the easy route, to see if you'll throw the towel and surrender your soul to a life of crime, a life of lost, life out of control. But if you take a step back, think twice, get some goals. If you focus on your dreams and not your nightmares, you'll see your life get better with your new mindset. Get new experiences that you won't regret. I took control of my life. Now I travel the globe. I met Clinton, Obama, Maya Angelou. I might be the next man on the cover of O. You take control of your destiny, you never know. I've been on BET, BBC, CNN. I've been to almost 30 countries, spoke for 4 millions. Now they don't call me a monster unless I'm beasting the flow. They don't call me nothing but the goat at a show. So what can you do if you focus on great? More than me, probably, if you concentrate. Get the haters out your life, stop lifting dead weight, and listen to no one who ever said wait. You take control of your dreams and develop yourself. If you eat the right foods and develop your health, you'll live the life of your dreams. Trust me, you'll see, because you have nothing but greatness in your destiny.
Oh!
And that's me. Thank you.
They don't call me a monster unless I'm beasting the flow.
About to go down.
Oh, it went down. Okay, we can just end. That's it.
Oh, wow.
Thank you.
Omékongo, I'm glad I didn't introduce you at all. And because one of the things that you did it best, but I was like, oh, he's such a great rapper.
Thank you.
Wow.
Work on it for a few decades, so you know.
That was definitely a first for us. I loved it. Loved it.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
How long did it take you to write it, Omékongo? Like, that's amazing. It's so much.
I'm very weird. Everything that you've ever read or have read or will read of mine it was written in less than an hour. Like, I may think about a poem or a song for months, maybe even years. I may jot a lyric down here and there, but I can't write it until the moment is right. So I put out like 7, 8 albums, books and different things. But when I'm in the zone is when I just got to put it down. So that was probably like a good hour or so.
Well, Marc,
wow.
if we had to write something like that, even together, it'd take decades.
Yeah, we love words, but that's a skill. That's a skill we're going to leave to you, definitely.
I might break into some other ones before we're done today. So,
all right. Let the
maybe
Omékongo
maybe he could do our next, like, it could be like our new opening. He could write us a new opening. Do you know how long it took us just to get our name, Omékongo? It was terrible.
Oh, really?
Yeah, just coming up with the name. And then it just came back to something that we used to always say to each other. It's about to go down. We used to always tell each other that on text. If one of us was going to go speak, we would text the other one and say, it's about to go down. Like, and then we would know, oh, you're going to speak right now.
That's what's up. I will do a song for you, no doubt about it.
Oh, hell yeah.
Remix!
Absolutely.
Just make sure it's a little bit West Coast flavor, okay?
Okay, no doubt, no doubt. Little G-funk action.
We got love for the West Coast. We got love for the West Coast.
Yeah. Okay, all right. Well, enough of the fun talk. Let's get to the idea.
Yeah,
like, that was amazing. So Omakongo, just for the listeners out there, of course, you are talking on this topic a lot through your work, and you're on TV, as you said in your intro. Tell us a little bit more about the idea and like what you're working on in that space right now.
So my goal is really, and this has actually been one of my more requested talks when I'm at corporate groups, government groups, or schools, and even community centers, is finding common ground in uncommon times. I've heard people say on so many levels that this is the most polarized people have ever seen, the United States. But even with that, there's ways to get to a place where we can build off of something together as opposed to tearing each other apart. And quite honestly, that's where the rap came from. And when I said when I was young, they used to call me a monster, African bushman, monkey, I was bothered. That came from a lot of the bullying that I experienced. My parents are Congolese, but I was born in Boston, Massachusetts. And growing up in the 70s and as the 80s babies, with everything like Tarzan and the Sally Struthers commercials and the Ethiopians with the start popping bellies and stuff, we were likened to animals. Like, we were beaten up, rocks thrown at us. We would go to school, get called monkeys and all of those other types of things. And so people would call us African bush boogie, African booty scratcher. And it's just weird because many of the people who I got it from, and I grew up in a primarily Black community, the majority of people I got it from was Black. And I'm looking at our skin color, I'm like, yo, we're all the same. I don't even got a stereotypical accent, but I was just getting hated on. And my older brothers and sisters, before we moved to the hood, they grew up in a whiter community and were dealing with a lot of racism, in that sense as well. And so for me, as I started to grow up, I started to realize that we do have more things in common. And if we could just work to understand that, we can actually build something better in this society. And that's really led to all of the work that I'm doing today.
Marc, I'm curious on your thoughts, because, in a lot of our past conversations too, we've had conversations that have touched on this, right? And I love when one of the things that we can do is get down to a really good idea, because it's a really big topic. It's a really big problem. It's worldwide. It's not just in the United States, right? It's very much a worldwide problem. So my question is, where do we start?
We got to start with ourselves. It's like you said, this is a worldwide problem. And so many times people spend all of this energy looking out the world, but haven't looked at themselves first. And in all of the work that I do, whether I'm working with educators, like I say, all the different groups that I talk to, I start with the same point. I always say to them, you have to ask yourself, 3 questions, and you have to ask them in this order. How does knowledge of my own culture affect the work that I do? How does the knowledge of other people's culture affect the work that I do? And now that I have this knowledge, what can I do to work to build communities where everybody can feel celebrated and not tolerated? The reason why so many of our efforts fail in these spaces, whether we're talking DEI, whether we're talking about just building a more united country, is because people always start with question number 2. They're always saying, well, what's wrong? I'm good. What's wrong with them? What do I need to know about them? What box do I need to check about them? And when you do that, you assume that there's nothing wrong with you. You assume that you don't have any biases. And if you're going to start off from that departure point, you're going to end up at the wrong destination. So I challenge everybody to ask yourself questions. Some of the things we do in our sessions, we ask questions like, when was the first time race made a difference in your life? When was the first time your gender made a difference in your life? Your age, your religion, your physical ability, the list goes on. And what I find is that oftentimes people start crying because they realize they never took the time to think about these things. And the fact of the matter is 99.9% of the experiences I've had in this country and across the globe, the first experience with these things are always negative. And so, but people suppress them. They don't forget them, but they suppress them. And there's some healing that maybe needed to take place during this time, but they haven't done the work. So they just buried it. And then they go out into the world thinking they got it all figured out. And then they get hit with a cultural reality and they either double down on their ignorance or they work to become better. It's like Marlo Thomas said, you want to become bitter or become better? And really at the end of the day, I'm working in creating a space where we can become better.
How do you get people, because you just brought up a very interesting point with those 3 questions. And I love that you have those 3 questions. And I love that you have those 3 questions in that particular order. How do you get people to be that introspective first?
Yeah.
Because clearly that's hard. Yes,
absolutely. You got to demonstrate it first. You got to lead by example. And so one of the things we talk about, Chimamanda has a brilliant TED Talk, The Dangers of a Single Story. And I do an exercise of people where I ask them to talk about their single story as a bias that they developed about somebody. But I start with myself because, as leaders, as facilitators, people they need to see us go first, especially when you're talking about race and stuff. And so I tell them about my single story that I had about white girls. Growing up in Boston, Massachusetts, and, growing up in a Black community, I didn't get this message from my parents, but, really at the end of the day, every single time people will say like, don't mess with white girls. If you mess with white girls, something's going to happen, you're going to catch feelings, and this Emmett Till mentality is still playing in the background. Right. And so, really at the end of it. And so that led me to have a single story about them. And what started to change it, which changes many people's ideas, is exposure. You get exposure to individual people. I had family members who started dating white females and I got to meet them and know them on an individual level. I went to college, undergrad, and, you get paired up with different people for your group projects. And, you get to know people on an individual level. And, the stereotype was gone, really at the end of the day. And now experiences like that, exposure like that allows me to look at people for who they are at the end of the day and not for who the stereotype about them is. And so once you demonstrate it, I find that other people are willing to demonstrate it as well.
Cathey, I
you still hear me?
Yes, perfectly. Cathey, I had a question for you about how to get people to care about this subject, especially as we were just talking about how hard it is for people to be introspective. And Omakongo, I love what you said. At the end of the day, it's got to start with the person who's speaking first and sharing your single story first. Do you find, Cathey, that on topics like this, it's hard for people to digest it because of whatever fears whatever fears or whatever stereotypes that they're holding in, right? I'm curious, what do you think about how do you get people to even care about looking on the inside first? So that they can listen to this message.
Our minds are melding on that, Mark. When Omekongo was talking, I was like, yes, you're saying the right thing. But how do we get people to care about that? And I think that's probably the basis for this conversation is what I would love to veer that around. Because Omekongo, I've listened to you talk about so many things in this space and you're so brilliant. You're so compassionate. You're so motivational. I'm like, everybody should just listen to Omekongo. Then we'd all be great. Then we'd be fine, right? But I think you're right, Mark. And maybe, so when you said the 3 things, Omekongo, so one thing hit me, by the way. You said start with knowledge of your own culture and how it affects, if I wrote this down, I was trying to write it fast, and how it affects the work that you do. Well, first of all, I thought to make this message more general, I would make it affects the way that you live. Period. Work, home, everything. Take out the work part, because anything tied to work also sounds negative, I think. Is this work? Oh man, is this work to be doing? Is this racial stuff? Which is terrible. It's not. It's human stuff. It's be a good human kind of thing, right? And so I think maybe this is my knee jerk. What came to reaction, because I loved that starting with yourself. I thought about first, people love, they know themselves. Like, what if everybody starts with the things that are good about themselves?
Yeah.
What are your good traits? And then go, okay, what could you be blind to? I don't know. That's where my mind went. Because I was like, if I first say, well, like, I'm a kind person, I'm compassionate, I think about other people, I'm highly emotive. So if somebody's feeling bad, I'm feeling bad. Like those are good traits. What could I be blind to? Oh, there's a lot of things I could be blind to. I could be insensitive in the way that I use my words. I could, not understand that somebody didn't have the same background that I did. So then maybe I'm explaining a situation and assuming that you and I grew up the same, or then I don't know. I felt like it might be easier to talk about that if you prepped it with something positive.
Yeah, it can help. I feel like it can definitely help, and I feel like, particularly in situations where, we all have to start somewhere, right? You want to put yourself in a position where you can start with the good, and when you start with the good, you're more likely to end with the good, right? And so when we're asking these questions, when things made a difference in their life, people are usually talking about their experiences of other people. But when you start with yourself first, and you start looking at some of the things that you were brought up to do, I was brought up to treat people with respect. That's a kind place to start. I was taught to treat people how I want to be treated. Like, that's a positive place to start. Then the questions start to come up about, like, well, where were there spaces where I didn't do that, where I didn't act the way I thought I was supposed to act? And is it with a particular group more often than not? And if so, what does that say about me? And then that leads to more questions about, what do I know about myself? I'll give you an example. Teaching at American University, I teach several classes there. I teach a class on Jay-Z. You should come check it out. It's pretty popular.
I love it. I love it.
I have a PhD in Jay-Z, so it's a popular class.
He's not kidding. Actually, he's actually not kidding.
Wow. You can check out the dissertation. But I teach another class called intercultural communication. And at the end of the semester, one of the white students said, this class made me realize that I was racist. And I was like, wow, I didn't even put that as part of the syllabus. Like, you might realize you're racist in my class. I wasn't even part of the ad, but, and so, but he said, when I came into class on the first day, I asked myself, why did I get the angry black male professor? Nothing about me. Didn't go online, didn't watch any videos, just saw my appearance. And I had a blazer on and, whatever. And he said, going through this class, it just made me realize the racist ideas I had. And one of the stories he wrote was when he was a kid, like 5, 6 years old or something, he was sitting with his uncle watching TV. And his uncle was pointing to the black folks on there, and he was like, do you see that guy right there? That's a N-word, like, say the whole, the whole thing full out. Like, and that was his, like, introduction to black people, was the way his uncle was raising him to be racist. And so those are the things that people got to start asking themselves. Well, I'm a kind person, but I've always treated Asian people a certain way. I've always treated people who are Latino a different way than I've treated white. And why is that? And you'll find that it usually comes down to stories and lies that you were told about people, which is the subject of the book that I'm working on now, which will be out in the spring. It's called Lies About Black People. And it's really getting into how lies that have been told about Black people have actually worked to undermine and hurt us all. And then it talks about what we can do on our anti-racist journey to find that common ground.
Whoa. Whoa.
I was thinking the same thing, Mark. I was like, yeah, every time Omakongo, like, wow, Omakongo, you just said so many great things. Mark, I'm wondering too, like, Omakongo put out kind of when he first started the book, I think, right? Omakongo, so he put out a thing to ask people to fill out, this questionnaire about lies you've been told about Black people. And I filled one out. I don't know if I'll make the book or not, but
it was powerful.
I filled it out, and it was a powerful experience to actually sit and try to unwind it. And so one of the things that's coming to my mind really quick, and maybe this is just a thought I had, I don't know if it makes sense to either one of you, is what I think you're doing, Omekongo, is you're having people, you're going back and trying to rewire. And the only way to rewire is to rewind, right? When you rewind, I had to rewind to these places. Like you asked the simple question, what lies have you been told about Black people? I jotted it down. And then I was like, and then you're like, where'd you hear about it? And I was like, did I make that up or did I hear this? And then I was like, no, I did hear it. And then it really got me in this space. And I'm sure everybody could talk about that in any kind of stereotype.
Yes.
What lies were you told about fill in the blank, right?
Absolutely. I mean, that's what we live in the world. I mean, they say that we make up our minds quickly and we change them slowly. And the less we know about each other, the more we make up. So if you're not surrounded by people who are of different backgrounds, the majority of us will get our education from television. The Washington Post reported in 2014, I believe, that 74% of white people have no non-white friends, like not even no Black friends. So you can't even say like my best friend is Black, like no non-white friends. So like, if that's the case, where are you getting the information from about other groups? And I'm sure it's a high percentage for other communities as well. So all we get is the media, which gives us misinformation. And a powerful word that I like to use called agnotology. I don't know if I have a chance to get to that, but it's one of my favorite words to talk about. But we're also suffering from a lot of that today as well.
Hold up, wait a minute.
Yeah. Say it again.
You can't just throw out a word like that and
then move on.
Respect the English teacher in the house.
Exactly. There's an English teacher in the house. He's like,
no doubt. Drop agnotology, and I'm like, so how about those Knicks? No. So I learned this word maybe 2 years ago, and it really summarizes so much of what we're dealing with today. And it's agnotology. It's also used to be spelled agnotology, agnotology. And basically what agnotology is, it's the study of how doubt is produced, particularly the production of misleading scientific data. And the best example that everybody's going to understand is the smoking industry, right? Tobacco in the 60s. Once the tobacco industry realized they couldn't refute the information out there about the dangers of smoking, they basically said, well, we're just going to create doubt. And they literally wrote in 1969, doubt is our product. So it's like, let's just put celebrities in advertisements, because and I'm just making this up time-wise, it doesn't matter. You see Elvis or Beyonce or Jimmy Dean or Michael Jackson in a commercial smoking, then it must be cool. This science, what are they talking about? Elvis is smoking, and I got Joe Camel. I love this cartoon image, right? And so that's what we're talking about. You just create doubt, and that automatically makes people question. So I'm gonna ask y'all real quick, what are 2 phrases that emerged in 2016 that represent agnotology today?
2 phrases that created doubt.
2016, come with an election.
Oh, 2016. Oh, okay.
Oh, what? Make America great again?
Yeah.
Nope. Fake news. And alternative facts.
Yeah.
That became popular to such an extent that people on all sides of the spectrum have used that. And that's the modern day example of it, because as soon as you say something and people say that's just fake news, they're introducing doubt. Yeah. Oh, those are alternative facts. They're introducing doubt. And when you introduce doubt, there's no need to have a conversation, because you may not. How do you know? How do I know? Nobody knows. Therefore, I'm going to just do my thing. And that's part of the reason where we are today.
Wow,
so true,
you just dropped something. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's real, man.
So then, Cathey, I want you to go, but I'm going to drop this question for us to think about. If the presence of doubt is prolonging stereotypes, how do we erase the doubt, right? And how do we get people to erase the doubt in their own minds and in their own, catch this word, Cathey, in their own lives?
And again, we melded, Mark. I don't know. We're on some kind of weird cue today. I was thinking this. I was thinking the same thing. I was like, the doubt. For me, then the idea is like, if you know, Omakongo, you just described a situation where like somebody might not have a Black friend at all. And so where are you getting your information from? It's almost like, how do you confirm or deny alternative facts, fake news, doubt? How do you do that? That is getting to know somebody that you think that you know based off of, you know, anyway, it's kind of confronting doubt, I guess, is what I was thinking. Marc.
So one of the things I ask people to do is, you know, and this is going to be part of the book, but I also wrote it in like a small blog, is I really challenge people with this thing I call the rule of 7. And all people who really say they're about this life, people who really say that they're committed to DEI and all of this other stuff, I'm like, yo, like, I want you to ask yourself 7 questions. And the answers to those questions are going to tell you how committed you are to breaking down the biases, breaking down the stereotypes. And you know what? You can even make up the 7 questions on your own, but I'll give you some on your own to start with. What do your 7 closest neighbors look like? What do the authors of the last 7 books that you read look like? What do the hosts of your top 7 podcasts look like? You go to the theater, what does the cast of the last 7 shows that you saw look like? You watch TV, what does the cast of the last 7 shows you watched look like? You got kids in your life? Who are the authors of the last 7 books you bought them? Who are their 7 closest friends? Who are your 7 closest friends, right? If you are in a leadership position at your work, what do your last 7 hires look like? You go to religious, you go to church, mosque, synagogue, or whatever. What do the 7 people looking next to you look like? At your job, even if you're not in a leadership position, what do the 7 closest colleagues of your team look like? If you go through and you can get through like 2 or 3 questions and say like, yeah, I'm committed to diversity. But once you get to like 5, 6, or 7 questions, if your answer is still the majority of everybody is all white, the majority of everybody in those questions is all Black or all Asian or something, you haven't lived a life that is committed to diversity, equity, and inclusion. Period, bottom line. Sure, you may not be able to move from your house tomorrow, but you can change an author in your book. You can change a podcast. You can change a TV show that you watch. You can change the social media folks. You can change the play that you go to. You can do that. If you don't do that, it's because you don't want to. And you've probably been in a position where you've never had to. And so people can say that the stuff that I'm saying is nonsense, or I'm racist and all this other, or I'm just trying to like stir up the pot. But at the end of the day, when you sit down with those questions, you are going to show yourself what kind of life you created and you might see that you're really not about that life. You also might see if you Black and like every answer is majority white, there's another issue going on there, which is a subject for a whole nother conversation on like self-hate. But, you know, but people need to have that type of, you know, self-reflection to really see what they've been committed to their entire lives.
Can I call it self-revelation? And if I ask that after they revealed the information that they find from this list of 7, and I got to tell you, I'm already thinking about how do I answer those questions, right? What's the next step? Because I think there's such an idea that's present here. What do I do after I go through the 7? What's next? If I say I'm about that life and I look at the list and it's not about that life, what do I do now?
Wait, before you answer that, wait, really quick, before you answer it, can I say something first?
Sure.
Sorry, before you answer it, I want to say something because it would come before that. I think one of the first observations on that was like, oh, on some of them, I'm doing great. I'm like, oh yeah, check, good, check. And then I'm like, oh shit, oh no, oh boy, you know? So before you answered it, I wanted to just make that observation is I think sometimes people might take a couple of the areas and think, oh no, I'm great. Yep. You know what I mean? Oh, I'm great in that. Because if I look at some of those, it's awesome. So, okay, now go ahead. Sorry, I just wanted to.
No, and like I said, that's why you got to do at least 6, 7 questions, because some of these are just easy. But what you do after that is you start with the easiest one. What's the easiest thing I can do right now to start introducing more diversity into my life or my children's lives, you know, or whatever? So an easy thing is to start with, look at your list of authors. If all the authors you've been reading have been, Black men or white women or, Latino females, or Latinas, I'm sorry, whatever it is, then it's like, wow, my mindset has been formulated by just reading all of this. I'm going to start mixing it up. A lot of times, I have a friend, Crystal Washington, who's a speaker, and she's a futurist. But, she rocks, Afrocentric clothes. She got a big afro. So she's like, when stuff goes down, people always calling me for diversity and equity and inclusion stuff. She's like, I don't do that. I'm a futurist. She's like, I know white guys who've been doing diversity work for like 40 years who can speak on this stuff better than I can. Right. So a lot of people, like after George Floyd got murdered and they wanted to get more involved in DEI conversations, all they did was go and get like Black authors and stuff. And I'm not saying that's wrong, but I'm saying there are white people who speak on these issues. There are Asian people, there are Native Americans. So pick that one thing, and everybody with all of these streaming services and that people pay all of these subscriptions for and watch like one show, you can start going watching different shows, on HBO. I started watching this show because, everything I'm saying to y'all, I'm doing for myself, or I'm working to do it myself. So I wanted to start mixing up different shows. I watched this show called Warrior on HBO, which deals with the experiences of Chinese immigrants and indentured servants during the late 1800s, right as the Chinese Exclusion Act was coming in. But it's also inspired by Bruce Lee, so there's a huge dynamic there in terms of the Irish gangs versus the Chinese gangs and all of that. But I'm learning so much about the Chinese experience at that point in time. I'm also watching something on Netflix called, RRR, and it's dealing with Indian culture and the like. I believe, I know that the cast is primarily Hindi. I'm not sure exactly what country they're in, but I'm learning things. Look, I'm a comic book head, cartoons all day, Transformers all day. Marvel Comics, DC. So one of the shows I just watched on Disney, I just finished, was, Miss Marvel. And that's a show geared towards teenagers, but it's a young, Pakistani, Muslim superhero. And they're doing all of this stuff, talking about the partition and, Great British and colonialism in Pakistan. And it's expanding my knowledge. And I don't got to go to the library or go to a concert or go hear a 3-hour speech or watch a TED Talk. Of course, we love the TED Talks, but I got that time for that. But I'm learning it in different ways in different spaces. I don't have to do that, but that's what I'm saying. So everybody start with the easy one and work your way up.
All right, let's play a game. Time to play a game.
All right, bring it on. Bring it on.
Okay, there's a game. Because you brought it up, Omakongo, and this just happened. I was freaking out. I'm like, okay, look. Okay, so the other day, the game is this. What could each one of us do to start with the easy, right? And I'm kind of cheating a little bit, and here's why, because he said start with the authors. I literally just saw this book the other day, and I picked it up, and I actually said to myself, I never read Black women author, Black men a lot, but not Black women. And then I was like, I got to read her book. This is right up my alley, speaking, right? And so that one was cheating. So I'm going to ask you two, what's something you could easily change, and then I'll think of another one. But when you said author, Omakongo, I was like, I literally just picked that up the other day.
Yeah. I know for me, one of the things that I started doing, and one of the things, I'm at a space in my life where I'm working on removing all language to refer to other people that I consider to be disempowering. So I've never used the term minority. I don't believe in it. I don't use the term people of color. I don't believe it's appropriate. I hate the term BIPOC, and we can get into that if you want. But for example, this whole thing about disability and disability culture. That's a word in my class. I talk about getting out of my mind and maybe talking about differently able, differently challenged and stuff. But I realized a lot of the authors I was reading about that were people who are considered quote unquote able-bodied. And so, I made a conscious effort to go read or watch, videos from deaf authors, from blind authors, some people who are in wheelchairs or have cerebral palsy. And, one of the videos I always show every semester in my intercultural communication class is a TED Talk by Maysoon Zayed, who she says her talk is called "I Got 99 Problems and Palsy's Just One," and she was born with cerebral palsy, and she's talking about all of those experiences, and those things. I was doing all of this DEI work, right, for years, and I'm talking about the civil rights movement and all of that. And I never spoke about, maybe until about 5 years ago, the American Disabilities Act and the activism that was going on around that time, which was happening at the same time that, Dr. King and others were out there fighting for civil rights and equal rights. But the documentaries I saw on Black history and all of that, didn't never mention those things. And I felt like embarrassed that here I am calling myself an expert in this field, and I hadn't done the real work to do that. I'm also learning to listen to people. Maybe 2 years ago, I had my first student who's transgender. Now, that wasn't the first transgender person I met. I was at a conference once a few years ago, and somebody who was transgender got up and, she said she had like an hour-long speech that was a lot, but she was slotted to speak for an hour. But you know what she did? She got up there and she said, "I'm transgender, ask me anything." And that conversation could have went for like 2 hours. People were just, because she was inviting to get people to learn about that stuff. So those are some of the things that I'm doing to challenge myself to think differently. You can't think differently if you're not listening to different voices.
All right,
Marc, you're up. Yeah.
So before I tell you what I would do, I'm reminded of early in my teaching career. I was a substitute teacher. I go into a class. I figured I'd be the cool substitute teacher taking over an English class and do a lesson on poetry. And in New York, of course, poetry means hip hop, right? Yes. So I start quoting all of these hip hop lyrics. Beastie Boys.
Oh.
And from House of Pain.
Oh.
You did this in this decade? Like the last 2 years?
All right, maybe it was a little bit older than that.
I was like, Beastie Boys, we're talking like, we're back to
Curtis Blow.
Yeah.
I got to tell you, this kid was like, "Hey, mister," because, that's the universal salutation and greeting from every kid to their teacher. "Hey, mister, why do you keep talking about all these white rappers?" And listen, I think my hip hop is very diversified. As a matter of fact, one of my favorite hip hop tracks comes from the time that I went in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. Titanium. That was a group that I loved.
No doubt.
It really, I remember it to this day because those kids were asking for something diversified, or actually they were asking for something that looked a little like them. And I thought I was diversifying. I love my music, and I think that I could be more diverse in my music in terms of different artists, but I'm going to go to a different area, comedy. I love my Kevin Hart's. I love my Chris Rock. Yes. I love my Richard Pryor. I love my Eddie Murphy. I love my Monique. I love my Steve Harvey. But I wonder, other than Ronnie Chang, who's an Asian comedian I could be listening to?
Yeah.
As a kids in my school, who's an East Asian, right? Who's a lesbian comedian? Well, I got Wanda Sykes, but that's a Black comedian, right? So how could I? Because I love listening to comedy, especially before it's about to go down when we do any kind of a talk. Yeah. I love listening to comedy to kind of just get me in a certain mood. But that could be an easy area for me to start looking for comedians of different cultures and different identities, so that I can include more diversity in one of my 7 areas. I love that.
Oh, yeah. No doubt. And I mean, and funny's funny, right? I mean, it's like, if the comedian's good, I mean, it doesn't matter who they are, and you're gonna learn so much. Just through the comedy. Again, you don't gotta pay for a course, you know what I mean? You don't gotta do all. I mean, we have more access to information on our phones right now than any other people had in time throughout their entire lives. Like, we have the whole access to the universe of information and history, and most of it is free. But, you know, we go to the same three websites, our three favorite websites, like every day. And we're just wasting, you know, all of this opportunity to learn and enrich our lives by enriching our knowledge about other people, and we're suffering for it, especially in a time where hate crimes are up 200% against like everybody.
Now, let me ask you this. As we all take this opportunity from this idea to take one of those 7 areas, find the easiest area to include some more diversity, how do we step into that space and not walk out confirming any stereotypes that we might have taken going into it?
Well, I like what Chimamanda said, you know, in her TED Talk, The Dangers of a Single Story, which I always encourage organizations to go watch and have a conversation about it. It's not that stereotypes are completely wrong, it's that they're incomplete, right? You know, you only tell part of a story.
Right.
So, you know, there may be aspects of something you may have heard about a stereotype. Some of it might get shattered when you're doing your research or learning. Some aspects of it might be confirmed. But then the question becomes, well, why is this particular stereotype true? For example, if people say that Black people are more prone to be involved in criminal activity, right? You may go and start looking at like county and citywide arrest records and incarceration records and all of that, and you will see a disparity between arrest of Black people and other groups. That is true. However, you dig deeper and you may find things like, oh, this country had a 1-to-100 ratio for crack cocaine versus powder cocaine. So if you're white in the suburbs of powder cocaine, you get 1 year versus 100 if you got crack cocaine in the hood. You also may find that Black communities tend to have more of a police presence. So if you got more police, you're going to have more arrests. And those types of things will start to get you to understand. So it's not about Black people are more prone to be criminals. We get probed more. We are also more likely to have people in our communities who are officers who don't live there. So they do not form bonds with the community. And when you look at somebody as subhuman, it's easier to shoot them unarmed. When you don't see, when you come from a society, one of the lies I talk about in my book, Lies About Black People, is this idea of that came through slavery of, you know, the big black buck, you know, the guy who can endure all types of pain, and, you know, you can whip them all day and they'll keep working. That mentality has transferred over into these unarmed police shootings. Because what are people saying? I feared for my life. The guy who Darren whatever, the guy who shot Mike Brown, you know, he's talking about, oh my gosh, Mike Brown, he was coming at me and he was so big. I felt like he was Hulk Hogan, and I was just a little child. You know how tall Mike Brown was? 6'2". You know how tall Derek, whatever his name was? 6'2". You see what I'm saying? But the argument sells. And Darren Wilson, I believe was his name. And so what I'm saying is, it's like those stereotypes continue. So if you just say Black people are more prone to be criminals and that's your stereotype, no. Go and start to look at what's actually happening at these arrest records. And I think now the crack cocaine ratio is like 1-to-18. It's not even 1-to-1 right now. And you'll start to see that there are reasons why the stereotypes that you have been the way that they have. Let me give you another example. This is a flip side. The stereotype that white people have of themselves who are well-to-do, like I pulled myself up by my bootstraps, like that type. And if I did it, they can do it. So look, here's the thing. We have a tendency to look at racism as this thing that's so oppressive and affects marginalized communities. And of course, that's true. But I got news for you. If you grew up in an all-white community, those Levittown communities where nobody else, you know, your doctors are white, the bank tellers are white, you know, other schools are white and everybody, you're actually a product of racism too. And you just don't know that. Why? Because when you read books like The Color of Law, and when you read books like The Color of Money, you would see how racism has been embedded into our real estate, where people had on their deeds, you can't sell this house to a black person or a Jewish person, where you would see that people would shut down their entire neighborhoods if a black person moved in. You would see that this was part of government policy, and when government policy failed, that's when the Klan come in and burn stuff down. Hey, Black Wall Street, right? Greenwood. So like, even in your like white lily, whatever, like you are a product of racism as well. But the stereotype of white people just work hard, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, okay, you work hard, no doubt. But shoot, my grandfather came out of World War II. Your grandfather came out of World War II. Your white grandfather got access to the GI Bill to get help with loans and houses and cars and education. My grandfather didn't get that. So, they say housing is like the biggest way to start your wealth foundation. We were excluded from that. You go to the New Deal in the 30s before that. Who was excluded from the New Deal? Agricultural workers and domestics, who were primarily black people. So every way people want to talk about, let's end affirmative action, but what about when affirmative action was white? Because this country has always done things to help white people get a leg up. Even coming to this country as immigrants centuries ago, you got plots of lands. We got shackles. I'm just saying.
Wow. Truth.
It's all right.
It's all right. It's all right. We love your passion, and the passion is really important to come through. And as you say that, here was a question that I had, and it ties back into what you said earlier, that it starts with the speaker, right? And it starts with the speaker being vulnerable enough to say, listen, I'm going through this too.
Mm-hmm.
What was an incomplete stereotype that you had about another group?
I mean, goodness gracious, I've had so many stereotypes. I think that the easiest one that comes off the top of my head is just stereotypes I had about Native Americans. Because just growing up in Boston, Massachusetts, not knowing any, the only exposure I had to Native Americans was on television, the Bugs Bunny cartoons and all of that other type of stuff. So that whole thing about, Native Americans being poor, being on reservations, the style of dress, definitely, I just thought like that was the case. I didn't, maybe not until I started, talking to my parents. I mean, I was still probably in like elementary school or middle school, when it started to change. Getting that exposure to realize that, you can have Native Americans who wear quote unquote, Western clothing, or don't live on a reservation, or who have more money than me, like all of those types of things. And then, when I went to college, my sophomore year roommate was Native American, and I was part of something called the Student Activities Commission, and you're 7 commissioners on campus, student commissioners, who help organizations get money for their groups. So I represented 9 clubs. And one of the clubs I was chosen to represent was the Native American Club. And so I had to work with them to advocate for them to get money for the things they wanted to do on campus. So I had to sit there and just learn so much. I also represented the Italian Club. I represented the South Vietnamese Society, the Hmong Society, the Irish Dancing Ballroom Club. I'm like, what is that? You know what I mean? But it required me, to be humble and sit back and like, yo, I got to come in and fight for these people to get their money. And I can't do that if I'm coming through with these stereotypes.
Wow. You answered my question.
Yeah, I love how deep this got fast. It's really good. It just shows you, my brain was like turning like, oh my gosh, there's so many layers to it. And I think that is what overwhelms people sometimes, right?
Yes.
But again, if we kind of go back to where you started, Omekongo, it literally just starts with yourself. It starts with the way you think about your community, the way you think about your own culture. What are you thinking about other people's culture? I don't know the word you said, agnotology.
Yep.
I love the presence of that in this conversation as well, because if all of us were aware of how much doubt is being produced in us constantly over an array of things, they don't even have to be about, humanistic things, like in marketing constantly, right?
Yep.
The paradox of choice is really that.
Yes.
I'm doubting myself. because what if I choose this flavor and this one's better? And what, I think even just that awareness of like, I don't know, I was trying to get it, Mark, to the simplest point, because I think it can quickly feel overwhelming and then people stop. And I don't like that. I mean, I know it happens to me. I'm like, when you start talking about the whole system, I was like, yes, there's a whole system in place, right? And as I've gotten older, I've come to understand how big that system is and how complicated it is. And then that overwhelms me. And then I feel empowered when I can go back to like, well, I can do something.
But Cathey, but here's the thing, right? I hear you, but what we're talking about now, like people can do on their own. They don't even have to tell anybody. Like when Mark is talking about just going to start watching different comedians.
Yeah.
He doesn't have to go on YouTube or and TikTok and Facebook and be like, I want to learn more about different cultures, so I'm watching more. You know what I'm saying? It's like it can be so personal.
Internal.
Yeah, and when it's so personal and internal, it doesn't have to be overwhelming. You don't got to go out and announce it. And then if you want, when you feel comfortable, you can start stepping out into the bigger things and the bigger conversations. And I'm going to issue a challenge to all of your listeners and viewers right now. The three of us here, we have all exposed our own biases towards something we had at some point in time. We did that. We didn't talk about you should do it. We did that. We demonstrated that. If you are going to get off of this show and not find at least one yourself that you at least had and might still have, you're not serious about this work. You're not serious about creating the change that you claim to want. You're not being the change that you want to seek. This is the work that needs to be done. Yes, some of us live in this world. I wake up looking for conversations and healthy debates to have on this stuff. I'm on social media. I'm on television shows, engaging politicians and all that. I live this. I breathe it. You don't have to do that. The change can start very small, but if you don't want to do it, it's simply because you don't want to. And you probably live in a space where you don't have to. And I'm challenging you to do better.
Oh my God, I want to, Omekongo. Thank you. That's so inspirational. Yeah.
I feel like I'm hearing the voices and the thoughts of those who don't want to. Because as far as they're concerned, they have no doubts. They're absolutely certain. This group is like that. Yes. This group is like that. And there's nothing you can say. But I do wonder, and I'm going to make a very trivial comparison. I have a very close friend of mine who can't stand the actor Willem Dafoe. He can't stand him. He can't stand him.
That's my brother too. He can't stand him either. I'm with it.
But he's seen almost everything that Willem Dafoe is in. And here's his logic. Because if anybody tries to say that I have some uninformed, ignorant bias, no. I've seen all the work. And I can tell you, not because of the color of his skin or not because of the way he combs his hair, but because in this scene, in that movie, this is what he did. And it was just the facts. And I do wonder, for those who might feel that they have no doubt, right, that they're absolutely sure, I wonder what a challenge like that would be to them as well, right? Because what are your biases or what are your stereotypes based on? Do your homework. Watch a movie, watch a comedy show, listen to it. Don't just listen to the song, pay attention to the lyrics. Watch this person in an interview, get some more information. That's then really see. And then I love what you said. You don't necessarily have to come back to some forum. You don't have to go on CNN.
Yep.
Pick on the challenge yourself.
That's right.
And don't even feel the need. So I thought there was something really powerful, and I kind of wrote down explore the doubt and solitude. I don't really necessarily like that statement, but I like the idea behind the idea of challenging yourself to inform yourself and to expose yourself and to not feel that you have to do it for the whole world to see. And in the process, it might actually change the way you see the world.
That's right. Look, it was Dr. King who said the two most dangerous things on the planet are sincere ignorance and conscientious stupidity, right? And, you know, sincere ignorance, you don't know what you don't know, and you can learn. Conscientious stupidity is the people you just described. It's like you don't want to know, or you might know, but you don't care to learn more or go to a deeper level. And that's part of the challenge that we have today when we talk about agnotology. You know, it was Les Brown who said the average American will read one book a year after they finish their academic studies. And he's like, you know, people will line up at concerts, but they won't line up at libraries, right? And, you know, when you look at that, and the majority of Americans do not own a passport, but they'll talk about different countries like they've been there. And so we live and over the last few years, it has become cooler to be ignorant. It's become you make more money being ignorant. You know, ignorance is an industry. You know, you can make a lot of money. Hey, Alex Jones, like you can make a lot of money now off of ignorance and build entire platforms off of it. And to be quite honest, there's some people. My belief is that everybody has their assignment, and I believe that maybe we are not the three people that can reach that guy you're talking about, but maybe somebody else will. And our job is to keep talking, keep speaking, keep talking with like-minded people, challenge the people who are open to being challenged, and keep building. And, you know, some people will express their ignorance to the point that they'll become violent. And like I said, hate crimes are up over 200% over the last few years, with Black people being the #1 target, followed by Jewish people. I believe Asians are third, particularly with the, you know, the COVID racism that's been out there as well. And so it's increasing. And a lot of that is from those people who don't want to care. For those people who don't want to do it, that we may not be able to do anything with them right now, maybe later, because they can come around later. I also love Dr. King's other quote. You can't legislate morality, but you can regulate behavior. You want to get out there and act a fool, lock them up. You know what I'm saying? Because you don't got the right to have your ignorance, you know, tread on my life and my family. But I believe at the end of the day, everybody can see the light. But sometimes you just got to keep dropping seeds. And maybe they'll hear me once and be like, nah, that's nonsense. But then they'll hear Mark and be like, nah, I'm not feeling it. They'll hear Cathey. They'll hear Malala. You know, when it gets to like that 14th person, I mean, you're a teacher, Mark. Like, how many times have you had people come back to your school who are as adults and be like, yeah, that thing you said back then, I wasn't hearing it, but I see it now, right? Yeah. I mean, it's like that. We've all done that. We've gone back to schools ourselves. I know I've gone back to teachers and said, yeah, I didn't hear it. So sometimes we just got to put it out there. People aren't ready to hear it. I mean, how many of y'all, haven't you both listened to songs that you've heard your entire lives, but this year you heard something different in a lyric? Or something different in a line.
Oh yeah.
And you know all the words. You already knew all the words. But you're like, oh shoot. So we just gotta keep putting it out there.
Or that's what it meant. You like you were singing it and you didn't know what it, and then you were like, okay.
Yeah. My sister, when she was a kid, she got in trouble for singing Voulez-vous coucher avec moi ce soir, because my parents are French speakers. And my sister was a kid and heard the song. She started, hey, sister. So, and then my mother heard that, my father heard that. They're like, don't be saying. She was like, oh, oops.
I didn't know what I was saying.
You're going to be stepping and be like, you're going to sleep with me.
Yeah. I didn't know quite what the meaning was, right? Totally. I know you hear kids repeating things and you're like, oh, I hope they don't understand what's being said.
Yes.
Mark, I just want to say something on what you said, because I also, music is kind of a very prevalent way that, to me, it's the easy one. And I love music as well. One thing that I subscribed to hating from when I was little was classical music, orchestral music. Couldn't stand it, right? Then our neighbors, a couple doors down, they're husband and wife, and they're both in the organ, symphony. And so we started going to the organ symphony, and I went there thinking what you said. It was kind of funny about the William Dafoe. I went there and I was like, okay, when we leave, I'm going to finally recognize all the things I hate about classical music. And then I went a couple times and I was like, this is rad. Like it's so cool to like be in this space with people that are appreciating it. There was like a different energy in the whole room. Like you were around people that cared about it. When you hear it on the radio, it's like a different experience. But then when you're there with people that appreciate it, and I don't know, I fell in love with it. Like it's such a weird, so I think too, if you're gonna hate something, at least don't be ignorant about it. At least know everything about it so that you could actually speak with conviction. And what you'll probably find out is you don't hate the thing that you think you hate. I don't know.
Well, welcome to my K-pop experience.
Oh!
Yo, I teach a class at American called Cultural Appropriation or Appreciation. So everything about K-pop was like just complete cultural appropriation. I couldn't mess with it. And then my kids started getting into it, and here and there, and it's this song in the car, that song in the car, and I got, and I started learning about some of the artists who realized they were doing cultural appropriation and changed up, they learned and started doing things differently. And I gotta say, I like K-pop now. I mean, I teach hot Pilates, and my wife and I have these yoga studios. I teach hot Pilates. Sometimes I'll put in a K-pop song, and I've seen some of the activists on some of them. Now I ain't gonna, I did have tickets to one of the K-pop concerts for my kids because they were doing so well in school. Got canceled, because of COVID. So I got that money back, which I appreciated getting that money back. It would have been tough to sit through a concert, but I, like you said, with the classical, I have a real appreciation for K-pop now. And I hated it going in, but I never fully listened to it. Just like the Willem Dafoe example. Once you get in it, you might be surprised.
Yeah. And then if you still don't like it, at least you have something to, at least you've explored it. Because at the end of the day, you're right, Omakongo. There's a certain number of people that are gonna not like something, whatever that something is. There's people that won't eat vegetables, none. Like I have friends that won't eat any vegetables, none, zero. Like what? None?
Wow. My friend only likes lettuce on his Big Mac.
Yeah. But if you explored really good cooks who could cook vegetables in different ways, then I think if you come out of it and you said, no, I still hate vegetables. They were cooked really great. I had them grilled, I had them, boiled, I had them broiled, I had them baked, I had them all kinds of ways, and I don't like them. Okay, cool. You don't like vegetables.
Yeah.
All right. On that note, I got to tell you this. I hate. How they tell you should never use the word hate? Yeah. I hate.
Heavily dislike.
Okra.
Oh.
And okra. It's just the slimiest, most disgusting thing. And I used to tell all people this, including my students one year. And this one girl in class said, Mr. Williams, that's because you never had my mother's okra. And I was like, I don't care who makes the okra. I don't like it. That was my ignorance talking.
She's like, right? Challenge accepted.
Yeah, right. And that's it. So she did, in front of the whole class, she said, Mr. Williams, if I bring in my grandmother's okra, will you at least try it? So now, how am I going to, in front of all of these students, say, no, I hate it, I won't try it? Yeah. Of course, I'm thinking, she'll forget.
Yeah.
She didn't forget. She brought it into class. She didn't bring it to my office. She brought it to class in the Tupperware bowl, nice and warm.
Yes.
And I'm like, all right, let me peel it off. Give me the fork. And I took a bite and I was like, wow, this is good. Listen, it turned out her grandmother she prepared it. I don't remember if she fried it, roasted it. I don't remember what it was, but it wasn't slimy and it was good. Yeah. And I was no longer speaking from my one experience with okra. Right? I diversified and multiplied my experience and my exposure, and I still won't eat slimy okra. But my hatred for okra is no longer the same because I educated my ignorance.
That's powerful, man. I mean, how does that translate into people? People, yeah, when I grew up, there was this one black guy in my community, and he would just always do this. One person in the surveys that I'm doing for the Lies About Black People book, the guy, my dad just said black people at my job, they smell differently, and they take that one experience, and what they do is they maximize the minimum and they minimize the maximum, right? So they take that one experience and maximize it to everybody. Everybody. And then when somebody does something great who doesn't go for the stereotype, they minimize it and undermine their accomplishments. So that Oprah example that you gave is very powerful when you transfer it over to human people. That one white person I met, she was just so racist, and it just made me think that all white people are racist. I just didn't want to mess around with them. And that goes to my thing about white girls that I started with the stereotype I had growing up. That exposure is the key. I mean, we wouldn't even need so much of this DEI work that we do in this world if people could just commit to being exposed and then studying what they see. One of the things the great late author Bell Hooks talked about, with desegregation and school busing, is she talked about there was so much energy and effort spent on sending Black kids to the white schools, but they should have also been sending white kids to the Black schools, just so people can see the differences, and not just say these schools are inferior based on race, but they're inferior based on policies that were put in place to keep them undermined. And when you see that, you want to fight. Some people, saw like a Peace Corps commercial and wanted to go and help and do different things and wanted to work to change the system. But we're all in our silos now, where we don't go on TV or into our social media spaces looking for information. We go looking for affirmation. We just go looking for people who think like us, and there's no learning there. We can't learn, we can't grow.
Oh, wow. My mind is blown, Cathey. With so many different things. And I know we're starting to draw close to the end of this idea conversation, and wow. But I got to throw this one in because I think it resonates with me a lot. Cathey, you said at the beginning that you took on Omakongo's challenge in terms of writing something for his book. And Omakongo, I wonder how many people might benefit from also that written exercise, right? Because listen, Cathey is my sister. I know her so well. Her art is so open and so welcoming. I even wonder, Cathey, for you, how much just writing it down, how that just opened your mind even further. So you imagine somebody who already wants to take on your idea, who already wants to commit to being exposed, how writing it down after being exposed, again, even if they don't share it with anybody, how that might resonate. And even those who say they don't want to, or they feel they have no doubt, even if they take the opportunity to commit to being exposed, if they could just take a moment to just in private write down what they thought, right? And I only say commit to being exposed because you said that a few moments ago, and the simplicity, and Cathey and I always talk about this, not the dumbing down and not the watering down, but the simplicity of commit to being exposed.
That's right. That's right.
Really ties up a call to action that I felt that I've heard from you during this conversation.
No, it's real, man. Not writing it down is therapeutic, and also just speaking it. One day I did these exercises, and a woman said her first experience, when race made a difference. She said the first time she was a kid, she said the first time she saw a Black person, she asked her mother, "Why is that man so dirty?" And when she recounting that experience, she just started crying. Right? We lost Bill Russell, legendary basketball player and activist and humanitarian. And one of his teammates, Bob Cousy, who also, passed, another Celtic great, white person, in an interview a couple of years ago, before both of them passed, they were talking about like the racism and stuff that was happening. And Bob Cousy said, and I wish I could have done more to intervene back then, and then just started crying.
Wow.
Decades later, just putting it out there, saying it, that stuff he held in, it can be so healing, and we need to be in a healing space, not just create safe spaces, but free spaces where we can put it out there, where we can hear, when we can talk about the times we messed up, or the time, my shirt here, says upstander, being at the times we weren't upstander, but also the times we were a bystander, also the times we were a perpetuator of whatever happened. We, as Jay-Z says, we can't heal what we don't reveal.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow. Well, listen, Cathey, I don't know about you, but my mind's been blown. The mic has been dropped. Challenges have been put out there. You called it a game. Omakongo challenged us. So I consider that a life-changing game.
Yeah.
Omakongo, talk to us. When we started this conversation, it was all about how to break down stereotypes.
Mm-hmm.
And you shared so much with us, and we've tried to contribute so much to the conversation. We're just curious, how has your idea evolved or transformed or grown since we started this conversation?
Well, it has in several ways. And two that I picked up was what you said about the comedians, was a great lesson for me, because it has me think, I talked about how I'm reading people who are in like different quote unquote disability spaces, but even in the spaces where I get entertainment, making sure that I'm looking for those difference of opinions in all spaces. And I never thought about it as relates to the comedy, right? And then, Cathey, when you're talking about the book that you just picked up, like you just picked that up out of nowhere. I am pretty much the type of person that I don't read a book unless it's recommended to me, or of course everybody's talking about it, like in the spaces that I'm in, an email that I get, or an NPR story or something. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go get that book. I should check that out. And of course, books that I read for research, like for the book and everything like that. But to just walk into a store and randomly grab a book, that, and us knowing you, Cathey, you're actually going to read it. What I'm saying? Not to be like, oh, I did my diversity work today, and then it just sits on the shelf. Like that's deep. That's deep, and that's like a real plunge into it, and that's action. That's being an upstander. That's like really just getting out there and doing that. And I'm like, how much more spontaneous can I be in the work that I'm doing? Which I think even in doing that will bring more authenticity to what I'm doing. So those are just two of the things that I picked up today.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that. And tell us at this point then, and by the way, everybody knows I'm going to the kitchen table and asking about 7 things. And then I'm going to actually take it to work and ask about the 7 things. This idea is getting spread. For anybody who wants to upstand with you, who wants to commit to being exposed just like you, how do they learn more about Dr. Omakongo? How do they get the book? How do they join this idea?
Absolutely. And hopefully if we get a chance, I'd also like to end with a short poem, if possible. Just let me know. But they can go to upstanderinternational.com. Again, upstanderinternational.com, which will forward to omekongo.com. In the social media spaces, you can just go to @Omekongo, OMEKONGO, as you see in the description as well down there. And you can catch me in those social media spaces as well. And I'm here for the conversation. I want to be engaged with you. I want to learn with you. I want to be on this journey together with you. And if you're interested in having me come out to your organizations, your schools, your companies, whatever it is, your churches, mosques, synagogues, I will just love to come out and meet and work with you and work on building these common ground in these uncommon times. And when the book comes out, Lies About Black People, we'll get, if you're interested in the survey, you can contact me. I'd love to get your thoughts into it. For survey answers that don't make the book, we're going to build out a webpage so people can see what everybody's saying. And it'll be an ongoing thing. And that's also going to help us. And so that'll be out in the spring. It's through Prometheus Books, formerly a division of Random House. So I've written in books before in the past. This is my first one dealing with a publisher of this level. So I'm very excited about that.
And we are excited for you. We are mostly definitely excited for you. And Cathey, are you ready, before we tell everybody, that if you've got an idea, If you know someone who's got an idea and you want to join Cathey and I in this idea conversation so that you can reach more people as you grow and grow the influence of your idea, check us out at itsaboutogodown.com at our website. Get in touch with us. We'd love to have a conversation with you and all other great idea creators out there. So, Cathey, we rang it in with some lyrical genius.
Yeah, we did.
Are we ready to ring it out with some lyrical genius?
Let's go.
All right.
The floor is
awesome.
yours, my friend. The floor is yours.
Thank you. So I'd like to end on a positive note. This is a motivational poem I wrote called Grow Towards Your Greatness. They say that greatness is a choice, but what have you chosen? You've been frozen in time and broken in mind. For too long, the same song playing in your head, living in breath, but better off dead. But who said that you didn't have the power? Who said this is not your hour? You've been showered with a steady stream of words that kill your dreams. But since you're still breathing, then someone has lied to you, tried to deny you of your own potential inside you. If you just decide to, let no one deride you. Don't even let them get beside you as you unearth the new you. Stop listening to naysayers and decide to do you. No more pity parties, sob stories, and boo-hoos. If no one told you that you're great, then let me be the first to. If you develop the thirst to drink from Faith's fountain, you'll develop the might to move mountains. You see, we remove tons of dirt to find 1 ounce of gold. So I ask you to remove tons of hurt and just uncover 1 ounce of your soul. You'll set yourself on a true path of excellence, getting out of your passenger seat and driving your own car. Reaching for the moon, but maybe only landing among the stars. You see, you have greatness inside you, but you must choose to be great. Blaze a path of excellence, leaving fear in your wake. All you need is already inside you. You just must believe in yourself. Grow towards your greatness and discover your true wealth. Thank you.
And on that note, it just got dropped on another episode of It's About to Go Down.